Am I in a jungle? Do I look like a jungle? Yeah, I kind of do. Now I know what a cat feels like. Nah. Okay, let's move this. Moving out, still in the shots, kind of, sort of. And bring my Picasso forward a bit. Yeah, yeah. The beloved peace lily. Love them or hate them, they're pretty much a staple houseplant in a lot of houses around the world. So today let's go through all of the different areas that the peace lily thrives in. If you've seen a couple of my videos before, it's all about creating the right environment for any plant to thrive in. They're a very beautiful, probably underrated plant, but I also know that there's a lot of people out there who are not a big fan of it because droopy leaves aren't a thing. Well, droopy anything really isn't a thing, is it? Nothing good is droopy that I can think of. No, we don't want them droop. Let's get to the video. The peace lily is an aroid plant and it comes from the rainforest of America, I believe. When they're in a rainforest, they don't climb up trees like a philodendron or monstera. They're a nice bushy plant that stays on the ground and just creates nice, big, amazing bushy foliage. So in the rainforest, they've got a very humid environment, there's lots of water, but because they're on the ground, they don't get a lot of sunlight, they get a lot of dappled light or sunlight coming through the big trees in the rainforest. But the peace lily can actually do very well in many different conditions when it comes to light and temperature. It's known as a Spathiphyllum, but Spathiphyllum is really hard to say, so peace lily works wonders, I think. And of course you can get very different varieties. I've got a beautiful green, very basic Spathiphyllum here with, look at that leaf, how beautiful and shiny it is. This is my peace lily Picasso. Admittedly, she has stopped growing a little bit for me lately because she definitely needs a repot. She is root bound, and even when I pick her up and squeeze, I can hardly squeeze that pot, which tells me that there's roots all around the edges here. So I'm looking forward to giving her a repot as well. And you can also buy other versions, but a beautiful plant, very underrated in my opinion. You can definitely have this in a lower light corner of your house. If you have seen my previous video all about some really good plants for low light conditions, the peace lily is actually one of the best in that list. Sorry, spoiler alert, I should have said something, but here's a card to that video just in case you want to go have a look first. However, if you want this plant to thrive in the rainforest when it's in its like homeland or home country, it does get some sunlight coming through. So it's actually more of a medium or maybe bright indirect spot. Remember, a shady spot outside is always 10 times brighter than a darker spot inside. So even though it's in a shady spot in a rainforest, it does get a decent amount of indirect sunlight. Don't put any direct light onto these leaves. That's the one thing you just got to avoid. Don't put it right next to a window where there's direct sun coming into the window. If you're in the northern hemisphere in the US or UK, you can go east or west facing or north facing. Here in Australia, we like to put it south facing, or again, east or west is fine. I have this girl about 1.5 meters away from a window, and I have plants in front of this plant between her and the window, and she seems to thrive very well. So medium lighting spot for me works really, really well. Okay, next we can talk about the watering of this plant. And actually, it's probably the favorite thing about this plant of mine. When it does get droopy, it's telling you, it's like it's talking to you that it needs water 9 times out of 10. This plant loves a lot of good watering, and you'll probably find you're watering this more often than a lot of other plants because they do like a good amount of water. But just make sure that your pot has a lot of good drainage, because the one thing this plant doesn't like, which is where I think people get caught, is that it doesn't like sitting in soggy, thick, muddy kind of soil. It prefers a lot of water, it likes a good drenching, but then that water does have to drain so the soil mixture just stays damp and not wet. That's really important. They're very drought intolerant. They hate to dry out, but they also hate to be overwatered and hate to be sitting in muddy, soggy soil. If you're not sure, the best advice I can give is really just to check the soil. If you feel the soil and it's a little tiny bit damp, and actually the pot is quite light and it feels like it probably hasn't been watered in a while, maybe the top part of the soil is dry and the leaves are droopy, then go for it. Give it a good water. If you give it a good drink and the leaves are droopy and the soil is too wet, it's not going to recover and the leaves will not pick up again. If you're not sure, grab a trusty water meter. Honestly, we all have them, whether you're expert or beginner, we all have them in our plant kit. These plants prefer to be underwatered to tell you when they're ready to water versus being overwatered. And that's probably the one biggest problem that people find, because as soon as they see droopy leaves on a peace lily, everyone's like, oh, give it some water. And 90% of the time you might be right, but you can overwater these plants, so just be careful. Water meter is your best friend in this condition. So let's talk about the pots next. So the type of pot that I would probably put or keep my peace lily in is a plastic pot. If you do like to have a terracotta or a ceramic pot, just use it as an outer pot and keep the plastic pot with the peace lily in it and just pop it in so you can't see it, like this one. So there you go, like this one. The one pot that I would probably stay away from with peace lily is a terracotta pot, because a terracotta does wick away moisture from the soil mix. That's why cactus love them and Hoya love them. Peace lilies not so much. The only way I would use a terracotta pot, however, is if you are very good at overwatering. If you do overwater and you give them too much love sometimes, maybe terracotta might be your best friend. She is an aroid plant, so she does love a good aroid mix. However, because she does like to keep the soil a little bit more damp than perhaps something like a philodendron or a monstera, I find that I use my aroid mix, and I'll leave a comment on the mix and the percentages of all of the elements that I use in the comments below. And when I'm mixing for the peace lily, I just up the percentage a little bit on the actual potting mix itself. So I use potting mix, orchid bark, perlite, a little bit of charcoal, and a little bit of worm castings. And usually I will use about 30% potting mix and 20-30% of the rest. But with the peace lily, I'll probably up that to about 40, maybe even 50% potting mix, and then again the rest. So still a little bit more water retentive for the potting mix, but not too much. I still want it airy, I still want it chunky. I still want those roots to get to the oxygen as well as the water, because she is an aroid and she loves the water draining through. So again, good drainage holes, a good draining kind of potting mix, which keeps the potting mix a little bit damp, lightly damp, not overwatered. Now I've just been going through all of that, and you're probably looking at this video going, but hold on a second, can't you grow peace lilies in water, like just water? Well, yes you can actually. Peace lilies are one of those plants that are actually ideal in water. But then you're thinking, but hold on a sec, if you're talking about it can't be overwatered and it sits in water, isn't that overwatering? Well, no. The whole point of overwatering, it's a really weird saying, because watering is giving your plant water, but overwatering isn't giving your plant lots and lots and lots of water. It's not the act of watering itself when it's overwatered, it's the act of it sitting in too much water for too long and the roots can't get oxygen. That's technically what overwatering means. So it's a little bit confusing, I get that. Think about it this way. You can think about it two ways actually. One, water is H2O. So a third of that water is actually oxygen, and the roots need the oxygen. So it's very easy for those roots to get to the oxygen. You do need to replace that water every 2 to 3 weeks to make sure that water stays fresh, and it's very oxygenated water. That's why it works well. The other way to think about it, if you don't like all the maths and the chemistry and everything, is just grab 2 cups. Fill 1 cup with water and fill 1 cup up with a really solid, muddy kind of stuff. Which one would you prefer to swim in? Just the water or the mud? Water is a lot easier to get through. It runs off quicker, it drains quicker. That's how I think about it in my head. Overwatered means sitting in mud, whereas sitting in water is actually just nice, easy flowing water. So it's a lot easier. If you're enjoying this video so far, please do take this time to push the like button and hit subscribe if you haven't already. It helps get this channel out further and helps tell the YouTube algorithm that you guys are enjoying this video and you're getting some value from it. And if you do have a peace lily at home and it's thriving and you have your own potting mix, you mix your own potting mix. I mean, do you mix your own potting mix? Let me know in the comments below. Let us know your favorite mixes. Let us know what any tips or tricks you have for keeping a peace lily. Please share it with the plant community, and thanks for joining this channel. So we talked soil, let's quickly touch on fertilizer. And I do find that peace lilies are probably one of the plants that doesn't like to be over fertilized. It can be a little bit sensitive to fertilizer. So if you've seen a few of my videos before, I do mention how I like to dilute the fertilizer amount down. If you've got the instructions telling you that it's 5 milliliters per liter of water, then I would do 50, 60, maybe 70% of that. So 3 milliliters for 5 milliliters instead of 5 for a liter of water, for example. And I'll share a little bit of a hack with you as well, and I'll talk more about them later. But if you want your peace lily to flower more often, feed it with orchid fertilizer. Orchid fertilizer technically says it's for orchids, but it's actually for just any plant. You can use it on any plant. Orchid fertilizer has a higher element that helps promote flowering in all plants. It just says orchid because we know that we love the flowers mostly in orchids, so therefore it's trying to advertise that it will help the flowers grow on your orchid plants. But you can use it on any plant. So pro tip, if you want your peace lily or other flowers to flower a lot, try using orchid fertilizer instead of regular fertilizer every now and again, and it'll help your flowers grow. Although there is a caveat to making sure that you have a good amount of lighting, and we'll talk a little bit more about the flowers in a sec. But before we get there, I just want to touch a little bit on humidity. Remember, it's from a rainforest, so it does actually like a good amount of humidity. Now, it can be okay in a normal room without a humidifier, but I do find that peace lilies do very well when they're gathered around other plants. Plants emit a little bit of moisture through their leaves and actually create a little bit of a humidity dome if you plant them together. It's one of the ways you can increase humidity. I find that 60% or more in the room is actually really beautiful for a peace lily. If you are getting a few little brown edges or tips on the leaves, that is just a little bit of a sign of humidity, so watch out for that. But again, if you're okay with a few brown edges, just to keep it in normal room household temperature humidity, I think it's fine. I don't put it near a humidifier, I just put it near other plants to help it out a little bit. But they do like a good amount of humidity as they come from a rainforest. And before, I did touch on the fact that this girl is root bound, and that's because she has grown so many plants out of the one base. She has divided and multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. And that means that when I repot her, I may be able to create new babies through division. And the best way to do that is to take off all of the soil at the base and grab the 2 or 3 stems that you want, grab them low to the stem, grab them near the soil, and then use, I find, a bit of a circular motion as you're pulling away at the same time. So pretend you're like, it's tiny, tiny, tiny little circles. Instead of just pulling it out and trying to shove it, I find that just moving it around a little bit, 2 stems near each other, slowly but surely you will come come out and you will be able to divide plants. Right, so let's talk about the flowers. Now I know you're already probably writing a message in the comment section and telling me off because I'm calling them flowers. They're actually called spathes, S-P-A-T-H-E-S, I'm pretty sure. Spathes because I believe technically the flower itself is not an actual flower, it's an actual leaf that's turned into a little bit of a different scenario. I'll see if I can Google some details and pop them in the comments for you. But it's called a spathe. I'm just going to call them flowers just for ease of reference, but if you want your plant to flower, you need to give this girl more light. When it comes to any type of plant flowering, it takes a lot of energy for that plant to put it into a flower because the flower itself doesn't gather energy, right? So it needs to take a whole lot of energy from somewhere else and give it to that flower and for the flower to grow. If you've got this plant in a low light condition, it's probably not getting as much energy as it needs to help with the flowering. If you want to get more space, if you want it to look like the plant that you bought in the plant shop and it had a whole lot of white flowers, then give it orchid fertilizer and give it a good amount of light. Medium to bright, indirect light is the best. And then there's really only one thing that I can think of that really is detrimental other than overwatering or too much water for this plant, and that is pests. And the one pest that seems to love this plant more than anything is the mealybug, in my experience. The mealybugs seem to love it because they are tropical aroid plants and they've got luscious, thick kind of leaves and thick stems, and mealybugs just love sucking all the sap out of the leaves, which is unfortunate. So please be very wary. Make sure you do treat it straight away if you see mealybugs. Also check inside where all the stems are because they're very good at hiding those mealybugs. I do have a whole video on how to treat mealybugs, but I find neem oil probably works the best because you don't put these in bright direct sunlight. But if you want to learn any more ways of getting rid of mealybugs, watch this video here. I've got 7 different effective ways that I find of getting rid of mealybugs on any plants. It's a good way to treat it. And if you do have pests on your plant but you're actually not sure what it is, I've also got an amazing free gift. It's absolutely free and it's an ebook all about how to recognize what kind of pest you have and how to treat those pests, including mealybugs and other common household pests. I'll put the link in the comments below. I'll see if I can put a link on the page. I'm not sure if I can here, but it's absolutely free. Please go and download it. Grab that ebook. It's yours to keep. And it took me a little while to pull together. So do let me know if you like it and if it's helpful for you. So if you are getting a lot of value out of this video, don't forget to hit that like button. It really does help me understand if you do like the videos that I'm putting together. Thank you very much for watching this video. Have a great week full of leaves, love, and a lot of laughter, and hopefully a lot of flowering peace lilies now. And I'll see you in the next video. See you later. Bye.